Good morning, everyone. Sydnie and I are pleased to be here. You want to say hi, Sydnie?
Yes. Hello, everyone, and good morning. I'm Sydnie Kohara, and I will be co-presenting with Lisa Boquiren today on Essentials. And just to give you a little bit about myself, I was a television journalist for 35 years and in front of a camera for 35 years and still do some on-camera work. But I love more now helping other people shine, which is including doing projects and presentations like this, because I mean, storytelling has always been in my blood. My grandfather, father, uncles were all photographers, and I just took it to the broadcast level. But I still feel like there are so many stories to be told, and there are great people to tell them like you. And communication is so important in every business. So just hope you have a cup of coffee or a glass of water. We're going to have a really great hour together.
And I do want to point out Sydnie Kohara's studio. You are now the third generation steward.
Yes.
That's great. Sydnie and I have known each other a very long time. I think we met when I was at the San Francisco Design Center, and Sydnie hosted a breast cancer fashion auction that ran for 6 years. But Sydnie is also not a stranger to the AIA community. In fact, she has hosted the AIA San Francisco Design Awards, if I remember correctly, Sydnie.
Yes, yes.
And she has also hosted events on the AIASF platform related to topics about women in design, equity, and most recently, Sydnie hosted Flight Path, which was on airport design experience.
You know, I think, Lisa, I want to say, when you find someone that you really enjoy working with and it makes your work better, you keep going. And I know that is true in the architectural and design world. I mean, I love architecture and design. I don't know anything about it. This is my contribution to it. But you know that when you find a good client and you want to continue working with them, you build on the relationship. And that's what we're doing today. What we're going to talk about in this hour are things that you already know. I see this as a refresher course for everyone out there. I mean, powerful words, powerful presence. You didn't get the position, the job you have right now, unless you prepared yourself to be interviewed and to put your best foot forward. You all in architectural school did critiques in college. You know, that was you had to present. It was all part of design school. You know these skills. I really feel like all I'm going to do is just remind you of things that are very important, and even more important now that everything is coming through the lens of a camera, that everything that you have done in front of people, you will now be doing in this small space. However, don't think of it as not being able to work, because I see opportunities. You have this small space, but you also are able to put your notes up. So you are looking at a camera, but you're also looking at notes. I have on my screen all of my notes and prompts that I can address today. So there are a lot of opportunities to make your own production, your own background. You don't have to worry if the lighting is bad, if you're on a stage, or if a mic isn't working. You have control of everything now. The bad part is you have control of everything now, and you have to make sure that it is really on point. Architects have to sell their projects to their clients, so we want to emphasize putting your best foot forward today. And the one thing I'll say is don't let your ego get in the way of a great presentation. Think of these tips that I'm going to give you today as tools, and they'll all be in your toolbox. I mean, so we're going to learn how to read a room when there's no room to read. You know, when your audience is virtual, which means that your voice and your movements are so key to really making an impact. This particular slide, you see Steve Jobs, you see Dave Chappelle, you see Brené Brown. These are people who have millions and millions of views on YouTube. I mean, Steve Jobs, his 2005 commencement speech at Stanford, 35 million views. 2007, and this is a good lesson for us all, he introduced the iPhone 2007, and he did it in a 10-minute speech. I mean, how many of you think you can do a presentation in 10 minutes? And what he did is he hit the highlights. He he made you fall in love with the iPhone, and the other layers of the onion you could find out later about how many gigabytes and what was on the inside. But in 10 minutes, he introduced the iPhone, and you can do it too. One of those tips: don't get stuck in the weeds in your presentations. Dave Chappelle, 28 million views off of one of his shows. Brene Brown, best-selling author and researcher, her TED Talk, 40 million views. And most of you know TED Talks have an 18-minute limit. The camera and presentations can be so powerful with so little. And that's part of what messaging is about. But today we're going to focus on you as a messenger with powerful words. What do they have in common? You know, to know your audience. And that's the content. But the presence is strong delivery, key phrasing, emotion, energy, pacing. And just remember, you're in here. And you have to put it all in there. And everyone needs to be a storyteller, to tell the story, to present, to engage. The number one thing is you want people to like you, whether it's going to be a potential client or it is someone else that you're working with as part of your project. Let's go to this, our next slide, because this is a video of the designer Eileen Fisher. Most women will know who she is. She has been around a long time. I see her as having a strong Zoom presence. So let's just take a look at this and just kind of get a feel for what you like and don't like about this.
And some days, let me tell you, over the COVID year, it was a little bit hard to come in with a positive attitude. And I definitely failed a few times, but for the most part, you know, I think that, you know, bringing optimism and joy and possibility to every baby step, to every problem, to every situation. Yeah, that's what moves us forward.
So in the last couple of weeks, I've been part of some presentations. This came from the Asia Foundation, an international group that supports empowering women in 18 different Asian countries. Eileen Fisher was being honored there at the Lotus Leadership Awards for leading the way in equity in women. But what I found compelling about her voice, her sincerity, her emotion, her clothing was in her distinct style, but it didn't distract. You focused on her face. She just used powerful words, powerful pauses. She actually mentioned in this interview that how little confidence she had sometimes still going into her work or selling her designs. Her lower voice, the pauses, you find yourself leaning in to listen. So what I also noticed too, you notice the symmetry in her background. It's clean, it's simple, but to me, I just felt like I focused on her, nothing distracted me. And that's, you're the star of these presentations from now on. And these are the things you need to look at. So I thought she was a great example from an event I worked on a week and a half ago. Yeah. So the first thing when we're looking at essentials is check the tech. Check the tech is just so important when you're looking at your top gear. How many of you just use your laptop for all your presentations? Everyone have an external monitor? I would say that if you have the opportunity to get an external monitor with a larger screen that helps you understand the small camera and a large monitor, you feel like you're in a larger room. So I think that is very important to maybe have a large monitor. I am also working from a monitor, and then I have my laptop here with more notes and more information if I might need it. This is part of the toolkit you'll create. And this is just part of whether it's working at home or working virtually, you will want all of these things. And in this day and age, they are not that expensive. A good microphone. I bought a brand new laptop. I think it has a great microphone. Lisa, you have an external microphone, don't you, that you use? Anything that will help for the perfect presentation with no distractions. So you have a monitor, you have a good microphone, a ring light. My ring light came from Staples. It cost $35. I may consider getting another one so I have light on either side. Especially if you're working from home, you have windows around. You want to make sure that you're not backlit. You want to make sure that it is just the perfect setting. So a good ring light for $35. Check the tech, make sure everything works. You test your gear. Luckily we had a rehearsal yesterday, and I had gone somewhere else to use the internet because my internet had gone down at my home. The internet did not work there, so I'm at a second location. But testing, preparing, practicing, it is so important. Your internet, does your webcam work? I actually have a good webcam in my computer, but the camera that I use is an external Logitech. I put it on top of the monitor. I feel like it is just a much stronger, and it's a better tool for me. So I have upgraded from the laptop. I think it's just important to have all of these tools. You make sure that this internet, the webcam, the microphone, everything works together. And I can't emphasize, just with your office now being at home, make an investment in these good tools and this good tech, because this is the stage that you're creating. And I know that you can actually make sure that it works for you, whether it's the lighting or the scene. It is just perfect. When you work with a larger monitor, a lot of times if you're working, how many of you have been on a stage? Corinne, Steve, I know that you have worked with people out on a stage. You are always looking back at a PowerPoint, but see the opportunity of having your notes right under your camera. That is what I have right now. I'm looking at my bullet points right under the camera, and you can't really tell that I'm looking at them. I just glance down every once in a while. But to me, having that tool so that I can focus on creating a great presentation, I think it's so important. Having your PowerPoint on the monitor under the camera. We'll show an example a little bit later on of how you can always stay focused on your words and your connection to the audience, because to me, that is very, very important. Lisa, I know that do you also use a ring light, and how do you use it when you make your presentations?
I have to say, everything I learned about ring lights, I learned from YouTubers, beauty bloggers. So I have two ring lights, and they're just, to your point, Sydney, about not being backlit. I'm facing windows right now, and I have two ring lights pointing, at me. There's a nice throw distance for the light. Like you, I have an external Logitech, and I actually have a stand for my monitor. So it's high for my laptop, I should say. So it's high enough, so I can see it, but it's sitting below the camera.
But again, I think a ring light, just so you are not trying to compensate with outside light, your kitchen lights, a lamp next to you, you deserve to have the best light and putting your best face and foot forward for these presentations. So, I think a ring light is essential. Again, the camera, so many people want to look at the people who are in their gallery and in their Zoom presentation. And you may look at them, but they're looking at this camera. Again, my tip would be put a little piece of paper, and even I had to do it. I mean, I was on camera for 35 years, and I still have to put a little note sometimes that say, look here, because there's so many distractions around. So put a Post-it note behind your camera, or put a picture of your kids or your pet. It's something to keep you focused on. This is where your audience is. This is who you're speaking with. This is who you're convincing to invest in your project or to bring you on board. So again, don't look over like you're looking at someone's dessert at a cocktail party. Make sure you focus on that camera. I think that is just very, very crucial. So again, let's go back to setting the scene. When we talk about setting the scene, no drab or distracting background or windows. You want flattering lighting, framing, the noise, no accessories like kids or pets running around. Lisa, one of the things that we have discussed, and I see that a lot of people are using it, Corinne at AIA LA, Sarah, you're using this. Take a look at these backgrounds. These people are, Sarah, you're using a background, but I'm seeing these other two. Lisa, describe these, why you decided to pick these. I let Lisa decide.
So, I mean, three basic backgrounds, there can be many versions of each of these categories, but the virtual backgrounds, I think, popped up last year. And many of you probably saw the video of the interview on the BBC where the kid interrupted the interview. And this is actually a virtual background from that. So the backgrounds can be virtual. I have a virtual background that I've downloaded off of the Dwell website. So it's a photography, architecture focused background. Some people choose to have a personal background, as we're seeing in the middle example here. And some people feel comfortable showing off their space, or they have a corner where there's good lighting, like Sydnie said, or they can set up a filming area really for themselves. And then the third example, which Sydnie pointed out, is actually, and we have Sarah Murgy actually joining us today, but this is a San Francisco firm called William Duff Architects, WDA, and they have an example of a branded background, which actually, let me show you what it looks like. So this is the branded background. I think this was a staff meeting, and WDA has gladly loaned the let us use the image. But three things about having this kind of a branded background, where the photo is not 4-color, it's knocked back considerably. You can see that pop-up logo, so it's a very discreet way of branding your firm. It's a very subtle way of showing off your portfolio, but the focus really remains on the person speaking.
Yeah. Lisa, let's bring it. I mean, Sarah, who works at William Duff Architects, joined us today. And Sarah, if you would unmute, I want to talk to you about how WDA came up with this particular branding, because I think it's genius. You actually do so many things in just a virtual background. So I first saw it when I worked with William Duff and Gensler on that online event about airport design, Flight Path, along with Woods Baggett. And it was just a great event, but I was just blown away by your virtual background. Tell me, how did WDA come up with this idea, and how did you decide on this particular design, Sarah?
Well, thanks, Cindy. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, we do have multiple practices, a residential, commercial, retail practice, and we wanted really to create a branded professional virtual environment for our team where, because we're all working from home, where everyone could plug in really easily and feel like they are comfortable in the setting. And so we arrived on the idea of being able to, subtly brand ourselves with our project, our work in the background, but we wanted to do it in a way, and I think Lisa hit on this, where it's not distracting, it's grayed out. And we have, our logo placement is in such a place that whether you're looking at it horizontally or vertically, it shows up, but they tell a story in the background. So the projects are grayed out, the people pop. And we found that, it's just been really a wonderful way to make an impression. You're in a large Zoom pre-proposal meeting and you've got 4 members of WDA there amongst, 50 people, and people remember seeing us. Oh, I saw you guys there. I saw your background. I saw your project. So you make an impression. And so that was one of the goals we had. We wanted to make sure that we were seen in the virtual world, that we felt comfortable in the virtual world, that it told our story, that when we come in for interviews or we're speaking with a prospective client, we quickly communicate this cohesive professional team, and we have our best, most relevant work behind us. So the project behind me is a mono, one of our restaurant projects. So I would definitely have this background up. And so with the team, if we were speaking with like a retail prospective client or, in an interview for like a typical project like this. So we just found that these are really helpful for us to communicate our brand in a very subtle way and just to unify us as a group in the virtual world.
Sarah, if you don't mind, can you unclick your virtual background just to show it? I mean, and I just.
Sure. Sure, I'd be happy to. Let's see, I'll choose my virtual background. Turn it on. So that's my virtual background. It's pretty dull. You know, you can see my wall of post-it notes, which is actually pretty cleaned up for me. But yeah, you can pick, we have multiple backgrounds to choose from. So, you know, I can pick this one, a winery, a workplace, one of my favorites of a residential project, citywide project, and you just kind of pop and the projects kind of help tell your story.
Do you find if people are interested in what is behind you and ask you about those projects, and does it sort of liven the conversation and expand the conversation that you have perhaps with strangers?
It does. It really does. And when we're you know, when we're talking to them about a project, you know, oh, look, the one behind us here. Well, let me tell you about that. You know, and so it's an easy conversation starter, and it's also an easy way to break into talking about your work as well.
And to me, this is one of those production values where, like, I just had mine made. I can see a lot of things that I would change about it, and that's something that I will do after this. Saying, okay, I'm sort of mooring around my hair. Lisa, I love yours. I mean, Corinne, the AIALA, it's a very bright. It pops. Sarah, just having that WDA in red. There are things that sort of identify you, but just it captures the attention of people, and it holds it, and that's what you're looking for. You don't want any kind of distractions that will take away from your message. So can you use these things like the virtual background, and have several of them if you can, you know, all of your tools, everything ready, so when you walk into your presentation, which happens to be here, that you don't think about anything else but putting your best foot forward and telling your story and evangelizing, as Steve Jobs always did. He did 10 minutes with the iPhone and just got people saying, I need this in my lives, because this will change my life. And he said that this will change your life. And to keep everything else simple and to focus on exactly you and your words and your story are so important. Sarah, thank you so much, and thank you for sharing the story behind your virtual background. Again, it's one of the nicest ones I've seen, and does again, discreet branding and very easy identification. It's a chance to showcase your portfolio, and it keeps the focus on you, on the person. So thanks so much, Sarah. That's really great.
Thanks.
Just take that as a great tip to just brand your business without sort of promoting it in your face way.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to be ready for your close-up. These are things that, again, a lot of people say, poo-poo this, we don't need to worry about that, but take a look at this. And these are, Lisa, why don't you describe where these are from? Because
Sure.
There's a lot going on here.
A lot going on, but what we're focusing on for this slide is what works, mostly what works. So this is, again, I live in YouTube land when I'm not on Zoom. So this is a clip from a UK YouTube channel. And these are 4 presenters. Obviously, they're presenting at home because they're not able to present at the studio. So going from the top left box here, if you notice the gentleman here, his face is in the shadow, and partly because the lit light fixture, which is on, is kind of drawing your eye to that instead of to him. So to what Sydnie said earlier, again, the lighting has to be on your face. It doesn't have to be on the background. The background is not the messenger. You are the messenger. So make sure your face is very nicely, evenly lit without any competing other light sources. Now, this woman has beautiful skin, lovely skin tone, texture, and so does her top. So in this case, we have a situation where it's too complementary. Her skin tone and her top are too complementary, so she gets washed out. So you want to make sure that, like this lady below her, who has, her hair is fabulous, it's on point, And the pop of blue works for her coloring, her skin tone, her hair color. And so she just stands out, even if the background is still a personal background. It's not as cleaned up as probably some people would like, but she stands out. And the final example here is a strong background. It's a rather solid, very dark color. But what this woman has done very nicely, we think, is that she's, to use an architecture word, juxtaposed herself in front of the camera by wearing a very bold shirt in a nice color that flatters her face. And again, the use of eyewear, I think for her, works really well.
And if you have any just quick little questions about the slides as we go through them, I don't want to keep all of the Q&A for the end because you may have something that comes up. But one of the things, Lisa, that I noticed about this, the woman in the top right, I would love to have her be more prominent in the camera, like the man on the left, top left. She sort of disappears into that background. There is nothing that she tends to be part of the background and not so much front and center, which is I think very, very important when you are speaking to a camera. And again, the camera, the one thing that I always tell people is the camera sucks so much energy out of you that you have to take the energy level up a notch when you're speaking. I mean, I don't speak like this in my daily life. I understand though that to create this energy and this passion about whatever the subject is, I need to make sure that it comes through on the camera. And what I have found in all my years of television is there just has to be this little more of an amp as you're speaking to this camera, because it just seems to just take everything it has from you. And if you are speaking sort of in a normal voice, it can come across very, very sort of low frequency. So the main thing is, though, make sure the background that you are front and center and the background doesn't take over. And whatever it takes to keep your eye on the camera. On the right, the woman is sort of looking off. If it's just for a split sec or something, but go right back to it, because this is the person in front of you at a networking event or a cocktail party. You're speaking to them, and don't glance off like something else is more interesting, because it immediately comes through in the camera that you're distracted by something. But this is a great example of what what works and what doesn't.
And to the point, Sydnie, about framing, I'm sitting forward on the chair I'm sitting on. If I did this, I would disappear.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually not, I'm sitting like on the edge of my chair. And some people like to sit in the center. Some people like to sit back a little bit. But I think the gentleman at the top left here is framed nicely, lighting and cluttered background aside, because he's like more forward in the frame.
I mean, I should bring my big, large monitor forward because I can see that I could be a little bit larger. Sarah, we've got a question from someone, if you'll quickly unmute. Peter, thanks for being here, but Peter is asking, does each team member have their own signature background image, or do you randomly assign them for a meeting?
Well, we actually created about a dozen backgrounds, so people have the freedom to choose the background that's appropriate. If we were going into an interview, per se, we probably arrange in advance which image we'd all have, because we'd all want an image that we could talk to if required. But everyone has their choice, and some people, depending on what they're wearing that day, might stand out from a background better than the other, and it's also what makes them happy too. So there's a selection of around a dozen to choose from, and they have the freedom to choose which one they'd like to use.
And Sarah, what I noticed too is you're very, very clean. Like I just worked on this virtual background and had it put together, and I can see I'm sort of mooraying around the edges if I do but yours isn't. Are you using something? Do you have a green screen behind you, or why does it work so well for you? Or I've got my hands up too much, because Therese Kelly, who is on the call, or on our virtual presentation. Thank you for being here. She says, sometimes the virtual backgrounds are distracting when the person fades in and out. So what are the strategies to prevent this? And is it a matter of lighting?
I would say it's a little bit of all those things. My background, as you saw, was pretty plain behind me. So that does help in creating a less of a bleeding background, as you move. Also, just your movements do kind of bleed the background. It's also then choosing to get a more grayed out background does help, because it creates a stronger contrast between you and the background for the cameras. And then I definitely think that, choosing clothing or lines of, that are a little cleaner help you to stand out and stay sharp in the virtual world.
No, it does look great. And those are great questions. And I encourage you, as we're going along, if you have tips or tricks of the trade that you want to share, this is great. And this is what this is a conversation so that we can all learn from each other. So Sarah, thanks very much. I can already see something that I would like to change, and how can we just get better and better about this. So let's talk about putting it all together. We've seen all the things that we can work on there, putting it all together. And I want to go back to this Eileen Fisher and break it down from a production value standpoint. What works for her? She is looking into the camera. She has this carefully cultivated attire. Many people will be aware that Eileen Fisher is her clothing is timeless. Blacks and grays and camel color and whites, but it's just timeless. And she has sort of cultivated this look that really speaks to her brand, which is, I think, is very, very powerful. The black works with her because she has this white hair. There are these wonderful, this contrast. And the other thing I noticed, I think she had mentioned that she's a pretty quiet, introverted person, but she gets her gestures out. She makes sure that she has her hands and her emotion. We saw it in the video. She is a range of emotions and just 3 sort of screen grabs there. But also, when you look behind her, it is clean. It is balanced. As architects, what makes you feel good about a particular design. A pop of color. I love the symmetry of it, because it again helps me focus on Eileen and what she is saying and nothing else. And again, I will say that she probably could have used a little bit more light, a little bit of lighting, but it's not something that I'm going to call Eileen Fisher up and say, you need a little bit more light. I think this worked great. You are the star, you're the subject of the picture that you're composing. And as architects and designers, I think that this is something that all of you could really have a lot of fun doing. So enjoy maybe just working on this as a project like that. I think we have a couple more questions here. Do's and don'ts, body movement on screen and long meetings with breaks. Louise, who has joined us, says, I change positions, standing or sitting. Comments? I think that's great. To me, this is a different world. I think that everyone knows that we have to be very flexible with how we're doing things. And I think standing or sitting, I think that's going to be fine. You do what is comfortable. I'm looking at our gallery right now, and I can see people, I think, are much more forgiving in this pandemic age and how we're doing work and getting around. So I wouldn't say that anything is set in stone. What is comfortable. What I'm working on today is mainly when in a presentation are putting your best foot forward. So you definitely don't want a chair. If you find yourself swiveling in a chair or leaning back and forth, definitely get a stationary chair, because that is very, very distracting. So, you know, the hand movements, the do's and don'ts, we're going to go, let's see, is this in our next, I think in our next,
Your next slide.
yeah, the next slide. Let's take a look at this one. All right, Bill Gates. He is someone who, you know, we all know Bill Gates. He probably could hire any, you know, Oscar award-winning set and lighting designer. But this is a screen grab from something he did. But again, you notice what works for him. He, you know, his range of emotions. You see again the symmetry. There's no color, but the color, except for his skin tone, and that is a color, and it pops. I know that on Microsoft Meeting, I know that I've seen somebody on our call today who is using the blur. If that works, there is this virtual background, and you can blur out your own background, and that works. I have no doubt that he had plenty of people helping him with this. So Bill looks good. But one of the questions was about hand movements, do's and don'ts. When you are on a stage, and I mean, you know, Steve or Corinne, Steve Tanner, you're on the call, or Corinne, I mean, you both worked on a stage. You know, you have a lot of room to move, but when you're in this little screen, you've got to get your movements up in here because they can't be down below. But, you know, Steve, do you mind if I just bring you into this? Because I know that.
You're going to audition, Steve, for a movie?
Yeah.
And you've touched on my worst habit historically as an actor is what do I do with my hands? So.
Well, you know, that is hard. I mean, men kind of go to the fig leaf when they tend to stand. And what I learned when you're walking and talking, I mean, you know, what I do is a lot of times I will anchor my elbows to my body. And then I from there, and I don't move my arms way out, even though you saw Steve Jobs, they do it. They're working with clickers and things like that. But when I'm in a Zoom call, I usually, or when I was anchoring, I would anchor my arms to the side, and then you can just move your hands. I think what Bill Gates, to help him, what he has done is there's probably a desk. He's sitting at a desk. He has put his elbows on the desk. So all of a sudden his hands are in front of his face. See, I mean, no one walks around with their hands like this, but you see how high they are in this. So he probably has his elbows. Someone has said, anchor your elbows to the desk. And so when you're talking, when you're gesturing, it's all around your face. And you're emphasizing certain points. And to me, that's a tool. If you have the desk, use it. Leave your elbows on, so you're bringing in this energy of your hands, and you're explaining, this is my presentation. This is what I want you to look at. I'm, you know, the hands can be so much of the energy that is taken away when you're on a stage. So I see, I'm sure you do just fine with your hands on a stage, but I hope you don't mind if I brought you in about that. I just think it's hard for a lot of people, but use tools like that. Use that desk, anchor your arms, and when you're speaking and it brings you closer to the camera that you, I mean, Sarah, you looks like you have your elbows on the table now. And it's, like I said, in real life, you would not be standing in a room with your hands up like this, like, oh, but when you're working with a small frame here, bring that energy into that. But again, he's got the blurred background, his face just stands out. You are centered on whatever he is saying. Kind of funny that we're using this slide. I mean, I hate to hear that he was getting a divorce, but anyway, that's what I think about when I'm looking at him now, and I feel sad. The background, the symmetry, it's clean. It doesn't distract from him or his message. But again, little tool, but those elbows in, you know, bring that energy into your Zoom presentation and your virtual presentation.
Sydnie, I actually want to ask Steve. So when you're auditioning for TV versus film versus stage, what's the quick tip for hand movement?
Okay, so you're talking, my last audition was probably 25 years ago.
Okay.
I'm going to take a stab and say, and you know, any other aspiring actors can weigh in. I'm going to take a stab and say that for auditions, particularly because, and a lot of them are self-tape now, even before the pandemic, that your hands are going to be important, and I think you want to use them sparingly. I think they're focused on your face, your delivery, what's going on with the internal stuff. That's my instinct. If I had to coach somebody, and occasionally people will ask for help, like with the self-tape or something, that's probably what I would say to them. I hope that's accurate.
Yeah. Because it's the emotion and the voice and the intonation and all that you're focused on with them.
And finding place, like I just did it, finding places where, you know, it's important to gesture. Most of the time I feel like, well, people don't need to see my hands. I mean, I don't want to be like this for the whole presentation, but
again, I mean, if you're sitting at a desk, Steve, if you were sitting at a desk, you put your elbows up and you're telling me something, would it work for you now?
I'm going to try that actually. My next couple meetings, I'm going to actually try that. I tend to sort of be free from the desk. I'm about a foot back, so I'm not able to do the elbows thing. But I'm gonna try that.
But again, you can just, you know, anchor your arms to your, you know, to your side, and then it just keeps your movements here versus way out here. So listen, thanks. I know you didn't expect me to call on you, but it's always fun to get people involved. Let's go to the next slide. This is a clip. I was working with a group called California Trout last week and helping them out. I'm a big supporter of conservation. There was a fundraiser for their conservation. They basically create science-driven projects that tackle climate change. To make the world better for the fish, water, and people. That is their line. This was in a very small production studio, but Curtis Knight, the executive director, was making an appeal during a fund in need, but to show you that he is speaking to several hundred people in a camera, but then you will see the chaos outside. And this is exactly what is happening if you're working from home, if you're working from a co-working space like this. So I just want to be able to show you about, you know, that we are all in productions now. We are all putting it together so that we put our best foot forward and face forward on Zoom. So Lisa, go ahead and play this.
And I have to share with people, Sydnie shared this raw footage from her phone. You were in rehearsal last week and we were preparing this PowerPoint, and I said, you know, can you get them to shoot something?
I did this while we were actually doing a live show, but so it's not that great, but I just wanted to show where there's so many distractions and you have to learn to just focus on this camera. So go ahead and play that, Lisa.
We believe to fulfill our mission, we must involve all Californians as our resilience, socially, organizationally, and biologically, depends on diversity. We must prioritize projects that mitigate against climate change as the primary threat to the health of our fish, water, and people of California. The next 50 years starts now. Now is our time to invest in big ideas. And Cal Trout's positioned to lead the way. We're science-driven. We're ambitious. We are problem solvers. We're collaborators. And we are in it for the long haul. With all that we've accomplished in the last half century, just imagine the impact we'll be celebrating at our centennial.
So that was Curtis, and a little bit of background. Usually California Trout holds their event at the Four Seasons in San Francisco. Big swanky, but everyone gets to wear jeans and jackets because it's fishing. It's, you know, it's Cal Trout, it's conservation. No one has to dress up. Let me tell you, the camera never blinks, and this is the opportunity that you have to capture everyone's attention. The challenge is to keep it with everything else going on around you. I will have to say that they're close to $1 million they raised, making this plea on camera. Curtis did a magnificent job on this. So we're hoping it will hit $1 million in the next couple of days or so. But you notice how the camera, it's just on him. He needed to speak personally to every person out there during this event. The chaos, you have to learn to focus away and focus on this camera. Will it take a picture of your kids on the top or a pet to help you focus just on the camera? You were front and center. Make the most of it. I need to let you know what Curtis is wearing. He has a Cool in the Gang t-shirt, and Kyle Trout is now 50 years old, and they were trying to find a way to show the generations of what was happening in the organization. And they said, well, let's just come up with these graphic tees. Of course, the other co-host had no idea who Cool in the Gang was. So you can see it was a young crowd, but he does look like kind of a cool architect, right? The jacket, the rock and roll t-shirt, the shoes. It was a fun event and very, very powerful event. So, it's just, you can stand up if it helps. If you stand up, just understand that camera is going to see everything. So Lisa, do you have anything to add? Many presentations for architects are in person, right? You're standing or you're seated.
Yeah, when you're doing, and by the way, the thing that makes Curtis look like a cool architect is the eyewear also. I thought he was an architect when you first showed me this, but when architects pre-pandemic, especially if they're going after a big project, will have a pre-proposal meeting, which Sarah alluded to, that now it's on Zoom. But typically the steps along the way to getting a project, especially a big project, is still a face-to-face in-person experience. So when architects do a interview as part of the proposal process, they're usually in a room with people. And sometimes somebody will be standing up and speaking to a PowerPoint. And to Sydnie's point earlier, we're focused on the messenger for this session, but we have a session on June 8th that is going to focus on the message. But to go back to what I was saying, usually there's someone from the architects team that's presenting, and maybe they take turns, so there's more than one talking head. So now you have to, as Sydnie said earlier, you have to contain everything on your Zoom screen and still be compelling and still tell a story and still sell your story so that you can be hired. So to the point about standing up, I think that gives architects potentially more surface area, i.e. your background, to really sell your work, not just through a PowerPoint. In fact, you could perhaps do away with that and just really use your background in a similar way that WDA is using, but perhaps using VR. And Sarah talked about this earlier, using VR and other kinds of technology, because if you're standing up, then that surface area is bigger. And then your ability as a speaker to convey the message, because now you're using your full body and there's more energy, is potentially greater.
Video can be such a powerful tool. When you think about it, who's to say in a presentation just like we did, you go out and have a drone video of perhaps one of your building sites, or interviews with stakeholders when you're out in the community, and to be able to embed those in a PowerPoint. I think it just opens up so many ways that you can tell your story, or you know what's even better, it's like I did on this, having other people, as a team, help tell the story of what's important. You may be the messenger, but working as a team and using video and the power of video can be great. Curtis isn't a professional speaker, but using virtual, you cut out the chaos, and this is part of sort of the practice of saying this is our new normal now. This is going to be part of it. But look at the opportunities, instead of saying, oh my gosh, I have to invest in some sort of production and lights and things like that. You know what? You're worth it, and your business is worth it. So look at it more as an opportunity to produce your own production and be in charge of everything. You're the focus. You have as your challenge to keep attention. And I know that one of the things, Lisa, you mentioned that we're going to do something in June about more the messaging. We've pretty much finished. We're coming to the end of this. I have given you so many tips, but it's a refresher course because you knew all these things. You did this in college. Every time you interview for a new position, these are things you're doing. So I do want to open it up to more Q&A about anything that works for you or what keeps your attention or unique ways that you're conducting business virtually. So again,
I have a question for you, Sydnie.
Huh?
I do have a question for you.
Okay, all right.
So having participated in a media training session where you were training a startup of a CEO, a CEO startup, I should say, for an onstage pitch. I don't know if you remember, you had invited me to observe. So what is the difference between that and when you're coaching someone for a virtual presentation? What are the main differences in your opinion?
Well, I think for when you are in front of people, it is, again, don't use your PowerPoint as a crutch. I mean, it's so easy to be able to just read from the PowerPoint, and this is where practice comes in. And it's just like telling a kid to practice piano. It's just something that you, when you're on a stage, and Steve or Corinne or anyone who has worked on a stage will know you practice because you don't have those tools readily available. When you are on a Zoom, I tell them to look at the opportunities, and where I don't have to look at a PowerPoint. I have my notes right now. I'm looking at this camera. I have my notes right under it in the focus. So everything is right under the camera. And I am just, as I'm talking to you, I'm looking at my bullet points going, oh, I forgot that. I forgot that. So it really makes it, it makes it easier in a way, but I've also practiced this. So I know what I need to be doing. But mainly it is just in both, you have to cut out the chaos around you and to learn to focus, whether it is on one camera, which is easier than, as you know, on a stage, you need to look on this side and you need to look to this side and you need to bring in the entire audience. And that is, I mean, that is a skill. That is just, it takes talent to do that. So in a way, if you can perfect your performances on Zoom, you can put all of your tools in front of you as you are working and presenting in front of this small camera versus having to look at all of these people, because they're all in here. You just can't look at them all down here in your Zoom windows. Quickly, David H. says, I'm loving this discussion. I appreciate the tips. What advice you might have for architects, designers when speaking to a lay audience, balancing the words and visuals? Well, David, I'm glad you brought it up because that is part of the messaging that we're going to do in June is just how to simplify your story, how to create a compelling story around a project, and how to keep it very simple. I mean, that's basically, it is just, you can't have all architects speak. You really have to appeal to a person who may not be familiar with all these terms. And I encourage you, if you have 10 minutes, look at Steve Jobs when he's introducing the iPhone, and you look for how many words you do not understand or something you don't understand. There are none. He says things like, "This will blow your mind." I mean, these are, he wants you to love and to this product. Is he evangelizing the layers of all? This is how many square feet. Those are things that you can give in a one pager or another document. But when you are presenting, it's the story, and you want people to gravitate to that. So that's the most important thing. And we will discuss that in June. Usually when I do media trainings, it can be 3 to 6 hours. So we're hitting the highlights here. So anything else that people have? Another thing I do want to say, we're coming up to the end. Lisa, you did it today. Your earbuds, when you're wearing earbuds, I mean, if you have earphones on, that's fine. But if you have earbuds, stick your cables behind you. put them behind you and put them in. It just is a cleaner look. It's not distracting. It says, I value your time, and I appreciate that you're watching, and I am going to make sure I put my best foot forward, and I am going to take the time for these little things, because that's what will be that would be distracting. So also, every time I do a Zoom, I will start my own Zoom, and I will take a look at, does everything look right behind me? Is all of my tech working? So I actually do my pre-Zoom and open a meeting before I actually go to the AIA LA Zoom. To make sure that this is the look. I'm not going to surprise myself and go, oh my, that is not working for me. So men, if you're wearing a jacket, this is the old Anchorman kind of thing. Sit on the back of your jacket, keep everything as clean and crisp as possible. Just this is, first impressions are very, very important. Just quickly, women, lipstick, a nice pop of color. I just noticed that on Zoom, they actually have something where you can add some color to your lips, whether it's men or women. You can just put a little tinge of, and I'm laughing. You can also put on crazy pictures too, but I thought that was crazy to put a little bit of lipstick and just fix hair, and you're fine. I mean, it's pretty forgiving, I think. So again, just get your toolbox ready and enjoy the experience, so that everything that you do, you focus on making sure your story comes through and is heard by the right people, and by the people that you want to sell. I mean, this is so important in business. You want people to care about what you are doing. And all of you are very, very creative people. I know you can do this. And feel free to, Corinne has our email address. Feel free, if you want to email me, have a particular question, that's great. I'm just quickly looking. Yeah, I think we've gotten everything here. But anyway, thank you, everyone. It was fun. I wish I had 3 hours instead of an hour, but I think this is enough for one time. Go off and go rule the world.
Yeah, thank you both so much. This has been a really great presentation. I was going to offer myself to take my background away, and you guys tell me exactly what I need to do. Go
ahead and do it, Corinne. We can see. It takes 2 seconds. Let's see how.
Yeah. Okay. I will show you guys how I started out. Doing Zooms, and I got criticism. Oh, okay. You see my clothes in the background. But I would at least clean that up. But someone thought that was a bathroom this summer, which is not. It's like a vanity area. And I was like, oh my gosh, people are actually looking what's behind me. So give me, yes, please, because I'll be the guinea pig here.
No, I mean, Corinne, all I'm going to say is actually your lighting is not bad in this, but I mean, you have to look, you have to do Zoom preview or Zoom, because how many, you've heard these stories of people doing things in the background, or the underwear hanging on the treadmill and things like that. Just take a look. I mean, it's really not bad, because you are front and center. You've got yourself close to the monitor. So I would say this isn't bad enough. That's nice too.
I like that.
But I mean, have some fun with this. I mean, WDA, that's a work one. But I mean, they, find, Lisa, I'm going to go look at Dwell's, because I love your background. But find.
There's an article in Dwell that says something like 10 top Instagram backgrounds. But what I love about Corinne is you're framed very well. You're more forward in the frame, which is nice, and you're wearing nice, the focus is on you because you're wearing a nice top. It's light colored, and it helps that you have light colored hair. So the focus is on you. And David David H had a point about how some firms will use colored, 4-color backgrounds, which can be a little distracting. But I think in Corinne's case, because you are forward in the frame, it's very flattering. It works.
It is. Yeah. I would put your earbuds behind your ear, because
I should try that.
Yeah, and so it works. But anyway, thank you, everyone. I know we're coming to the end of the hour, so I appreciate everyone being here this early in the morning.